Brothers and sisters, our days are momentous days, days the world have never seen before. They are most likely the days spoken of by the Apostle Paul when he said, they will clamor for peace and security, and then the end will come. Our world and our humanity is increasingly giving over to trust in logic, in man's rational ability to organize and protect and secure both economic and personal security. The trust in the providence of God and the fear of God are increasingly evaporating from humanity. And it is imperative that we as Orthodox Christians not simply have a good disposition to live a good life, to be quote-unquote good Christians, but that we actually are striving and struggling to acquire the mind of Christ, to acquire discernment, to be able to discern the spirits of the enemy and the spirits of God, to see behind the daily events, to see behind the logical explanations for all of the innovations and all of the new developments in our daily life, whether it be international, national, local, or whatever. But to see behind them and see the larger picture. It's very easy for us to be lost in our daily life, in our little world, in our daily walk here and now between us and the 10 or 15 or 30 people that we encounter every day, and to lose track of the larger picture. And if we do that, we will place ourselves in a dangerous position spiritually. For it is not enough simply to have a good disposition, as I said, but it is imperative that we acquire the mind of Christ, to be able to discern the things that are happening around us and take appropriate spiritual steps to avoid the traps of the evil one. When they introduce, and they, meaning the people of this world, the worldly minded, the ones who are giving over to the trust in their logic and their rational abilities entirely without any reference to God. When in our community more and more measures of security are introduced, we have to ask ourselves, what are the effects of this on our life? How is it affecting our life? In most cases, if we look at it spiritually, we analyze it, we will see that our life is becoming more impersonal. We are increasingly distrustful of our fellow man. And the system of security that is being placed all around us means that before you enter a bank, a hospital, a train, a plane, whatever, you are under suspicion until proven innocent. This is increasingly creating a sense of fear in the community. Not trust, not love for our fellow man. Not seeing a fellow man as a person made in the image and likeness of God. And here is where we need to have and acquire the mind of Christ and understand things spiritually. What is the aim of the evil one? The aim of the evil one is chiefly to blot out the image and likeness of God in man, to make us impersonal, to make us numbers, to make us animals, to have a biological existence and not a spiritual existence. To no longer be what the Mother of God is now in heaven, higher than the angels. To no longer be the crown of creation, but to be lower than the animals. The enemy of our salvation hates man, and he wants in every way to blot out the image and likeness of God in him, whether it be with cremation, that not even the bones of man will remain in the earth. There will be no grave to go to in order to light a candle and say a prayer for his soul. But then he will be wiped out. Ashes will be thrown into the sea. And no longer will his memory be fresh. No longer will there be a place to go to and say, here is my beloved. This is one example of many in our society. Increasingly, Greece is being made to resemble a Western European nation which has long since lost and ceased to become Christ-centric. We are increasingly being made in Greece to resemble and be built on the prototype of the secular West, such that in 10 years of living in Greece, one is amazed at the changes that have taken place. Systems of security are being introduced in banks, systems, in airports and other places, which introduce and increase this very impersonal way of life and impersonal existence. Whereas when one came to Greece 10 years ago, one was struck by how down to earth, how comfortable one felt. One rarely saw police cars. One rarely sensed any danger from any of the fellow citizens. But one felt great security because there was a certain level of communal life. People were people in community, not in numbers, not in personal existence. But we, on a very basic level, felt at home with those we met in the stores and in the shops and in the supermarkets. Increasingly, that's been lost because we're following the prototypes of a secularized West and adopting those impersonal ways. And increasingly, we're being introduced with the idea that our fellow man, we should be suspicious of him, not trust him, because maybe he is a terrorist, maybe he is a thief. And above all is our security. And where do we look for our security? We look for our security to the state. We look for our security to rational technological systems which will protect us from any kind of harm that might possibly be introduced. What is the result spiritually? What is the spiritual essence of all these developments in the Greek community? It is that we are losing trust in the providence of God and putting trust in man. Beware of those who trust in men and sons of princes, and not in the God of history and the God of providence, which organizes everything such that there is no such thing as luck or fate, but everything is the providence of God. Who thinks like that today? Increasingly, very few. Very few people live consciously that today, whatever comes to me throughout the day, is the hand of God. Nothing is an accident, but that may God give me strength to endure and to meet whatever comes to me throughout the day with peace of soul and firm conviction that His will governs all. The result of all of these developments and the trust of man and the love and the clamoring of men for security above all else is that we are no longer living like that. But we're living like people who have no God and have no trust in the providence of God. We as Orthodox Christians must not allow ourselves to sink to that level. We must avoid trusting in those things. We must avoid putting our trust in men and sons of princes. But not only that, we must strive to understand these developments in light of the gospel, in light of the second coming of Christ, and what it means for our community, and take measures in our daily life to protect ourselves from falling in deeper and deeper into that way of thinking and that way of life. If we can do that, we will remain, even in our weakness, in comparison to those around us, many of them who are trusting and have no trust in God but a trust in man. We will remain and become lights simply by maintaining trust in the providence of God. This is what will happen in the days ahead. Increasingly, Christians will not become more virtuous. We will not achieve the virtue of the great saints, the Desert Fathers, even of saints of recent times. Simply maintaining what we already have and growing little by little will translate into a great light in the darkness of men's apostasy from the providence of God, the trust in the providence of God. As a footnote, as a postscript, rather, today's program, I want to take one moment to rejoice with the church in America over the election of a new metropolitan, the metropolitan of the Orthodox Church in America. Father Jonah Paffhausen is a friend that goes back to my first days as an Orthodox Christian. And I know Father Jonah to be a very, very sincere Orthodox Christian and one who's struggling to live the monastic life. And it is a great day for the Orthodox Church in America that they have elected a true monk. A monk of a monastery, an abbot, who has passed through obedience, is struggling to be obedient to his elder. This is the tradition of the Church for 2,000 years. And this must be a prayer on the lips of every Orthodox Christian, that the one who oversees the community, the one to which we are obliged to be obedient, has himself passed through obedience, has himself been tried in the fire of the monastic life, such that he can teach others the virtue of obedience, without which salvation is very, very, very difficult to obtain. Let's all pray for Father Jonah, that in his young age he might lead in a very monastic way the Church in America and make decisions that are inspired by the Holy Spirit and bring us out of the malaise of a secularization, a very worldly way of thinking and acting in the Church. May his example and his love of monasticism bring little by little regeneration to the Orthodox Church in America and to all of us who are struggling to live the Orthodox life in America. Axios.